All right, good morning, Buckeyes. Let's go ahead and get started. So we start off this class in January in the cold in a classroom. It's now the beach. Well, I guess it's not quite the beach, but we can imagine. Guys can go ahead and put your Zoom backgrounds on, your beach backgrounds on. I send along some music, some sounds to listen to, so you can kind of imagine being at the beach. I will stop wearing these glasses here soon because they're ridiculous and I can't see anything. But the point being, we started off a long time ago. We've gone through a lot together as a class. I appreciate all the adjustments you guys have made. We're now at our end. We're going to wrap up talking about aggression, antisocial behavior, and then we'll talk about pro-social behavior, both of which, again, things that you guys will be able to handle well. I think you'll be able to understand the concepts quickly. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into things. We'll take care of a couple of last announcements. I'll pause to see if you guys have questions, make sure that we are all set as we adjourn from class. So starting first off with announcements. This is a reminder that the last two writing assignments were due before class. Looks like we're in good shape for that, so no worries there. I'm looking forward to reading these, and I will have them graded before your final, so that'll give you a chance to figure out what you need to get on the final, be able to kind of target that. So I want to make sure you guys have that information to let you know that I will have those graded before then. May not be well before then, but that just depends on how things go. As a reminder too, please complete the SEI evaluations. I always look at these carefully. Even if you don't believe me as I'm wearing these ridiculous glasses, I do look at these things carefully. I make adjustments based on class. So please give that feedback. It's also helpful for other students who will be taking this class later on to see what the instructor is like. I did send an extra credit opportunity out in email. I just wanted to remind you guys about that. Again, you have a little less than a week to complete that. It's just a short study you can participate in. At the end, you will put your name in, but that's just so I can give you credit. I won't tie your answers back to you at all. So if you have a little bit of time, want a little bit of break from things, this opportunity to pick up some extra credit, make that last exam just a little bit easier. Continue with the announcements, reminders. Exam number 4 answer sheet is due on Carmen at 9:35 a.m. on May 1st. So next Friday, it's going to be due. It's basically going to be due at the end of when we would normally have our finals time. Again, I'll release about 24 hours ahead of time. This will be something like we've done before. You can download it. You can answer all the questions and re-upload it. Again, keep in mind, you're only allowed to use your notes, your textbook, lecture slides, and that's it. So make sure that you're not collaborating with others, going online to find answers, especially because online you might get the wrong answer, especially. So make sure you're paying attention to that. I will be in the classroom from 8 o'clock until 9:35 on Friday morning to answer any questions you have as you're kind of wrapping things up, or if you need to check in with me, things like that. In terms of wrapping the class up, it will take me a little bit to get the final exams graded. There's 2 reasons for this. The first is that it takes longer to hand grade the exam, so I don't have the Scantron machine to run things through. So it takes me a little bit longer. I want to make sure I get the answers correct. So I do that kind of very carefully. And then also too, I will calculate your final grade and post your exam together. So that's the kind of the other reason why it takes a little bit longer to get that final grade to you guys, or final exam grade to you guys. I want to give everything back all at once so you see what your grade is. So please, once you get that grade, double check it, make sure everything looks good, and let me know if you run into any problems. At that point, grades are completely done unless there's a clerical error, something I misgrading, something on those lines. With that all being said, I wanted to check in on questions, see if there's anything I can address to make sure that we're all set as we wrap things up. You guys good to go? All right, so do me a favor, if you do have a cam, go ahead and turn it on. It is great to see you guys. It's nice to be connected. I also keep close attention on how things are going with taking notes as we're going along. So let's go ahead and get back into it. I'm taking these off because I can't see anything, like I said. I left you guys kind of a little bit of an awkward point. I have to apologize for this. We have just a little bit left for us to do related to aggression. Actually, it's just only about 2 slides worth, but I think it's all right. It's something I want to make sure we spent a little time with. So just as a quick reminder, we were talking about the general aggression model. And this is really the model that social psychologists are focused on the most in terms of current research, the way that we interpret aggression. And remember, we see a little bit of this is kind of this person by situation and interaction, which epitomizes social psychology. We know that from all the different things we've talked about. And how these inputs are then going to go through the roots of how someone affectively responds to that situation. Again, influenced by their personality traits. We see too their cognitions, their thought processes, and we'll actually pick up on that in a study we're going to talk about here in a minute. their arousal levels, so how excited they are. All these then feed into the outcomes. So how does that person appraise the decision or appraise the situation? What decisions do they make? Are they riskier? Are they more aggressive? Do they give a thoughtful response, or is it more impulsive where they have that hostile aggression reaction? So remember the cat example shooting the machine gun. So this is just kind of that immediate aggressive response. And then that's going to feed back into that social encounter. And one of the ways that researchers supported this was looking at violent video games and the response to these violent video games. And that's the last piece I want to spend some time sharing with you guys, is showing a little bit about how we can have the situation influence especially these routes. Okay, so influencing the affective, the cognition, and the arousal response. And I'm going to give you responses that participants had that were tied to these internal states that they had following playing a violent video game. Okay, so that's a little bit of a mini setup there, just getting us back to where we were, kind of reminding you things. Let's talk about the newest piece in terms of aggression here, in terms of talking about these violent video games and a test of this general aggression model. All right, so Brad Bushman, one of the authors of our textbook, who's also a social psychologist in the communications department in Columbus, does research on understanding violent video games. And in fact, he's been on presidential panels. He's done a number of things nationally and internationally to talk about aggression and in the context of violent video games. And in this particular study, it was a really kind of straightforward design, more or less. Participants came into the lab and they played either violent or non-violent video games. So they played Mortal Kombat, I think it was Doom. There was another one in there I'm blanking on. They also played, in the alternative condition, they might have been randomly assigned to play Glider Pro. I think Tetris was the other one. The idea was that these games were equally interesting in terms of kind of arousal level, interest in playing it, engagement, but they varied in terms of their aggression levels. And you can make an argument that maybe they didn't pick the best games. Maybe there's some critiques that you could have, and that would be, you know, very good critical thinking to think about that, to have those evaluations. But more or less, they're, you know, having participants play a violent video game or non-violent video game. So following playing one of these two video games for just a few minutes, participants then read 3 ambiguous stories that included some type of conflict. Okay, so this conflict was something that might induce aggression. We talked about that as one of the reasons aggression occurs, is conflict, is frustration. And then they had each story end with the stem, what happens next, and they had participants then write out what would happen next. They then looked at the different responses in terms of the affect, the behavior, and the cognition. And that's what I want to take just a second and share with you guys. Okay, so I'm going to move out of this so I can get into the actual article itself. So again, keeping in mind what the situation was in terms of playing violent video games or non-violent video games, let me give you the answers they gave to some of these scenarios. Okay, so I'll give you a scenario that they then had participants imagine, and then I'll give you some of the responses that they said. And I think it really highlights in just these short snippets, these responses, how participants dramatically changed their aggression levels. Okay, so here's our situation. So, in fact, I'll try to pull it over for you guys. Maybe you can see it. Okay. So, Janet had worked all summer long, and now a couple of weeks before school started, she felt she deserved a holiday. Okay, maybe you guys deserve a holiday now. You can come join me on the beach. After a bit of thought, she decided on a vacation to the coast would be ideal. After all, what could be better than sun tanning and swimming in the ocean? The problem was that she did not want to go alone. She knew her best friend Shannon would go if she could get Shannon. She knew her best friend Shannon would go if she could, but Shannon had been saving her money to buy a new stereo. Janet decided to go to Shannon's place and try to convince her to come out to the coast. Okay, so it says participants were then prompted, what happened next? List 20 things that Janet will say or do, think, and feel as the story continues. Okay, so basically that's the prompt starting the story. How would Janet in this case respond? So in terms of do or say, Janet takes Shannon's boyfriend. Okay, so this is the do or say response that participants are listing out. Janet takes Shannon's boyfriend. Janet says, you don't want to go, fuck you then, bitch. I'll just go and ask Jen to go with me instead. Don't wimp out on me. Speak to her with contempt as if she disagrees. Tell her how dumb the stereo is. Yell at Shannon for thinking of herself. Give her guilt trips. They get into a fist fight. Fine, just sit there in your hole and rot. They start arguing, deciding not to be friends anymore. Janet gets in her car, puts the car in drive, and rolls through Shannon's house. This to me is really amazing data to collect. Remember, this is how they're completing a situation after just playing a few minutes of a violent video game. They're thinking this aggressively. Okay? In terms of the specific cognition, so that was again what they would do or say in terms of cognitions, they would think she's so dumb. Maybe I should threaten her. Who needs her anyways? She's not going to go. I hate her. She better see it my way. Janet thinks Shannon is a loser. Why was I ever friends with her? What else can I do to piss her off? She better say yes. What's her problem? She shouldn't be such a stick in the mud. She needs to quit being so tight. In terms of feeling, they would feel mad, betrayed, furious, vicious, angry, annoyed, bitter, irritated, cruel, aggressive, cranky, very pissed off. And so you can see how just kind of this prompting from the violent video game, this mindset that participants are getting into as a result of playing just a few minutes of this game, they start to change the way they do things, they change the way that they act, they think. Again, going back to these kind of internal states. These internal states are getting affected, and it's then changing their appraisal of that kind of ambiguous situation. And in fact, that's what the results show. When we graph these out, in terms of all these responses, you see that violent video games, so those are the blue bars in this case, are leading to more of an aggressive response in terms of do or say, think or feel, compared to those non-violent video games. Okay, so across the board, looking at all the responses, not just that short little snippet that I gave you guys, we see that they're going to do or say things that are related to more violence. They're going to think more negative, aggressive cognitions, and they're going to feel more aggressive. And so there's a lot of kind of debate about violent video games leading to aggression. I think no violent video game researcher would say it's going to lead towards homicide and things such as that directly, but I think they would make the argument that at least for some time after playing the violent video games, there's more an aggressive mindset or cognition, more aggression kind of feelings as a result of just these violent video games, these short exposure to violent media. So again, this is one thing that's a little bit disappointing for us, is that we're not together as a class, because I love spending a little time debating this, but I think it won't quite work out as well as we'd like to. We have a lot to cover, but you can kind of think about this as you're studying, as you're preparing for the exam. What could be some points for and against violent media leading to aggression, in terms of especially thinking about that general aggression model. So I did forewarn you guys, this is just a little bit of left that we didn't quite get to. If I'd known we were this close, we would have pushed through a little bit more on Tuesday. But any questions as we wrap up talking about aggression? And if you're all good, let me know through chat. Just kind of send me a quick message. Just want to double check with you guys. All right, awesome. Apparently we're good and goof. Perfect this morning. All right. Okay, so we're going to change now and go into our last topic, which is be talking about pro-social behavior. So we're going to end on something positive, hopefully. We will see that pro-social behavior isn't something that automatically happens. There's actually a lot of thought process that goes into pro-social behavior, that being helping others. Okay, so give me just a moment to get our slides here.